This is Happy Monkey.
This is Happy Monkey.
Happy Monkey. Happy Monkey.
This is Happy Monkey.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
What's goody, y'all? It's your girl, Black Rose, and guess who I got with me? Catherine Nunez. And you know what we blazing early in the morning with my Happy Monkey tray? Some cherry pie. So enjoy this high with these lovely ladies, and I'll see y'all soon. Bye.
What's going on, everybody? This week, the podcast has a sponsor, ArdentCannabis.com. They're known for the Ardent Nova, which is a decarber, but now they have a new Ardent where they decarb and infuse in the same device. So if you use our code MONKEY, MUNKEY, when you're checking out, you get $30 off your purchase. So please go on and check them out. They got a bunch of other devices. Hey, you might get lucky and find something that'll...
Are you ready, everybody? Yeah, on the Happy Monkey Podcast with Ramon and Vlad. Today we just talking a little trash, a little shit for y'all. You know, just ain't shit, man. What's going on? We haven't really talked in a bit, so, you know, we just want to let everybody know we are still here. We are alive and kicking. We've been rocking out, you know, hard. You know, I know it's been tough times for the last couple months. You know, it's been COVID, and, you know, it's been a lot of this Black Lives Matter situation as far as, you know, the situation with police brutality and all these things. There's a lot of crazy tension in the air, but we are here, everybody, to, like, you know, to just, you know, neutralize a little bit your day, you know, get you off that, you know, all the seriousness and, like, you know, and pain and struggle that's going on all fucking day. You know, go smoke some weed and, you know, sit back, relax, and, you know, listen to me and my man over here talk some bullshit.
Yeah, man, because we all know that, you know, it are some trying times we're in right now, but we got to keep the people optimistic and positive and entertained, you know what I mean? And them to still be able to smoke their join a blunt and still be able to vibe out.
Absolutely. Because this show, you know, we keep away from a lot of politic issues and religious issues because we're not fucking politicians. We're not CNN. We're not none of these things. We're just fucking Ramon and Vlad. Our passion is cannabis. You know, we did the events once upon a time, and now we're here. So it's like, you know, I could talk shit for hours about weed and all this other shit, but don't talk to me about any of these politics and stuff because that's not, you know, I ain't training for none of these things. I ain't go to school for any of this shit, so.
Yeah, we just talk about them in a way where they affect the life of cannabis users, the way that things affect, you know, cannabis industry, the culture, and things like that. But as far as like all the other stuff, you go to CNN or MSNBC for that, not
man,
the Boulevard.
Not saying we don't ask questions and like real questions like I'm about to ask you right now. What's going on with the Dutch epidemic, my brother?
I don't know,
man.
The
Dutches, man. So I've been trying to fucking, you know, I still smoking Dutches. I know everybody, it's tobacco, blah, blah, blah. You're supposed to be smoking the joints. We in New York, nigga. I smoke motherfucking blunts. So I prefer to be smoking Dutches. And so far, where I go get my Dutches at usually, they have no Dutches. So I tried another store, no Dutches.
And they what they don't have is the blue Palmer ones, right?
Yeah,
they have the other ones, the clear ones, right?
But even so, they run out of those too. So we don't know what's going on. There's maybe like this. There's been like this rumor that the factories are closed or some shit like that. I don't know what's been going on. What have you been hearing? You been hearing anything?
I just been hearing the same thing. Everybody says their local smoke shop doesn't have it anymore, and It's like a drought out here on these Dutches.
Yeah, man, this is like gold. So I found some Dutches. Obviously, I'm smoking right now on a Dutch. I found some Dutches in Harlem, and they went up to like $2. You know, usually, for you guys who don't buy Dutches in the hood, there's like $1, $1.25, $1.50. That's the most that it went up. Right now, it's at a $2 rate.
Supply and demand, baby.
Supply and demand. So, I had to rack up a couple, and just keep it moving because I'm pretty sure the shit is going to go up again soon anyway. Or
they're not only gonna go up, but if they don't keep on manufacturing, they're soon gonna be extinct.
Oh, they're gonna be extinct, man. Somebody reach out to the Dutchess company. Tell them niggas we need a sponsor. Holla at a player. Send me a lifetime supply before your lifetime is over. How about that, man? Because I've been smoking Dutchess for 20 years. I need a little kickback. I need that.
And it's crazy because they always do this every certain amount of years. Because if you remember when we were younger, it was all about the Phillies, and then some weird transition happened where they didn't make them the same anymore, and then it was kind of the same thing.
And then we all transitioned into the Dutch phase, and like I stood in the Dutch phase. I know a lot of people now smoke backwoods. Backwoods is the shit, I guess, right now. And I ain't knocking you backwoods smokers because there's some of you guys know how to smoke fucking, you guys know how to roll it. I'll smoke a little sign with you. But I'm not a backwoods smoker. I'm a Dutch guy. And I smoke the Dutch with no leaf. So for those of you guys who roll with the leaf, I don't roll with the leaf. I roll with just the inner part of the cigar. And kind of like get rid of as much paper as I can. I'll have the paper probably be as almost as thin as a joint paper, like, you know what I mean? And even the width, but it's just the longer. It's a longer blunt, you know what I mean? And my man Ralph taught me how to not get rid of the butt part, you know what I mean? So he uses that, because that's where he puts the filter at and all that other shit. Because before we used to just rip that apart, so now we just we take off what we call the cancer paper, which is all cancer anyway.
That's crazy, but who cares? I want to know that one. It's not just the Dutchess, the Phillies, all of them in the hood forever. Everybody has always been taking off the cancer paper, but who came up with that this is the cancer paper, and who's to say everything else ain't the cancer paper too? It's like urban legends.
That's the straight up urban myth. So for those of you who don't know, have never opened up a cigar, I guess you probably don't smoke, but obviously most of you guys who smoke blunts know the butt part of the cigar. When you opened up the cigar, there's always like this extra piece of paper. It's like maybe purplish or some sort of dark, right? And this is the piece of paper that we rip off. This is the paper that we are referring to and calling it the cancer paper. That and the strip and the strip.
But there's no scientific evidence out there, ladies and gentlemen. That is the cancer paper. This is all urban hood legends. It's been passed along from barbershops to smoke shops everywhere, and people just ran with it.
And then that's it.
And people will flip on you. You'll be smoking them. Like, you didn't cut off the cancer paper?
You're
going to beat me up?
Yeah, man. But now we use that part. My man Ralph, Ralph has this technique that I have never seen anyone use as far as rolling.
You gotta get
Dutch.
a patent, Ralph.
Now, now we go talk about rolling Dutches. Because see, I roll my Dutch, no leaf, like I said earlier, and just leave it like that. See, now my man Ralph has this like whole preparation thing going on. He needs a pen. I'm like, why do you use a pen, Ralph? He's like, hi, I'm gonna show you. Boom, he uses a pen. He gets a filter just like you would use a filter on the joint, and he basically uses the inner leaf of the Dutch and like molds it into like a cone using the pen. Inserts the filter and then starts stuffing the Dutch with weed, so he's able to put as much weed as he wants at that point. So he does the super bats without necessarily using two papers. So that's the best way to do it. And he adds the filter to it. So to me right now, my person that I look up to rolling blunts is my man.
We're gonna have to have a battle with him and Puffington, because my man Puffington
can roll
too.
some Dutch.
So we're gonna have to set that off to see, because Puffington be rolling up all kinds of somersaults and all kinds of craziness that I'm like, how do you do that?
Definitely, guys, look out for Puffs with Puffs. That guy, he is basically like, I don't know if you guys heard our banter before, but he is definitely our weed connoisseur on the team. That nigga does all sorts of tricks. He's always dabbing, and he's always doing all the good shit, man. But definitely.
And I think that he's the one that's got it down where, like, he mixed Cali with New York, where, you know, New York is more blunt, prevalent, and the dab thing is just starting to take off, and he, like, sprinkles a lot of his blunts with different concentrates, and I think he's kind of mastered that, where he's incorporated both of them, and a lot of people haven't really figured that out here yet.
Absolutely, man. But definitely.
Now, I want to know what's going on. First of all, they said that there was going to be phase 1, 2, and 3, and everybody went to phase 10 like a week ago. And, you know what I mean? It's over for all that. You know what I mean? It was like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Everybody went 0 to 1,000 over here. People not trying to miss these 2 months of summer.
So, all right. So just to give everybody a little, a picture, right? So a couple months back, specifically me, Vlad, David, Ralph, and Original from the Weekend Warriors, we had to go to 42nd Street to film the thing for David Tran. What was the thing called?
It was for the charity
Chronic
Relief,
right? So we had to go film that. Middle of Times Square, not a car in sight, in the middle of the street.
Or a person in sight.
Oh, a person. Like, shit was super empty. It was super crazy.
If you guys seen the Joker movie, it felt like that kind of New York.
Yeah, it felt like, you know, gray and not a soul in sight. Now, bro, it's like, what COVID? It's like nothing ever happened. Everybody came back outside, and it's like, shit, like, you see the parks are full.
Yeah, because, you know, when you compound the fact that everybody's been inside for 3 months to the fact that it's summer and we only got 2 months or 3 months of summer.
Tension, with the police brutality shit. So of course it's gonna be everybody's just be like, fuck it, we coming outside, right? Like, it's a lot of tension and a lot of anger, and they're like, fuck it, man, we gotta go do something. We can't just sit here no more, right?
Yeah, man. So it's like you feel the city come alive now. The energy completely shifted.
The energy is up and about in New York City, and for all you guys who are protesting every day and, you know, out there, you know, please be safe, take care of each other, you know, be kind, you know.
But still, power to the people, and
you know,
keep on doing your thing.
That's what I'm saying. You know, to the protesters, just be safe, man. You know what I mean? Thank you guys. You know, be easy, and, you know, keep fighting a good fight. It is what it is.
You know what's another one that I don't understand what happened? It was a big thing almost like at the beginning of this year or end of last year, where it was like there's a ban on plastic bags.
What happened to the ban on plastic bags, my brother?
Every store I go to, I get a plastic bag.
There's bad plastic bags out here in these streets. I don't know what's going on, man. I was in the deli the other day.
They thought everybody was going to be walking around with a satchel that they bought from Whole Foods?
I don't know. What is it they call? What is the shit that David be having all the time? The tote bags.
They thought everybody's going to have a tote bag.
Yeah.
And nobody, New York is not really a tote bag friendly like that.
I guess not. I don't think every Ralph and David and Jose is running around with tote bags, waiting to shop.
No. And so it's like now you go into every store, they got plastic bags.
They still got the thank you, the big smiley face and the thank you plastic bags running around in these streets. But did it happen or no? Did they actually put a ban? Like, is it like they passed the ban? Like so I don't get it. So what are the stores supposed to do? Like, are these
paper bags?
Supposed to have
Is paper
bags, and then you're supposed to sell those tote bags that David wears. So people have that option.
All right, I get it.
But that's not gonna work in the hood in the smoke shops. That's not
paper
ideal.
bags. But why paper bags? Is paper bags any better? Isn't that fucked up too?
Not as fucked up as plastic, because plastic never goes away.
Right.
And plastic, like, they put it in landfills and it ends up in the ocean, and there's like no way to get rid of plastic.
There's no way to get rid of plastic. Yes, for sure. But paper, fuck it. So we could just burn paper. So fuck it, right? So that's better. That shit is still fucked up. That shit is still fucked up.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
And there's so many bigger issues going on right now. Yeah. You're really gonna crucify the bodega owner because he has some plastic bags? Come on, there's bigger fish to fry out here, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, or maybe they're just letting all the plastic bags that they have already manufactured, that's already done, like just run out. No?
That is a possibility.
I don't know.
But we all know that China's not going to stop producing those.
Well,
those
nobody
plastic
stopped
bags.
producing. We just came from buying teriyaki, and that shit came in plastic bags.
Nobody's gonna stop that plastic bag, bro. It's like, the society's been too dependent on that for too long to just turn a switch off and change it overnight. Get everybody be toted up like my boy Dave to have different colored tote bags and all that. It's a big transition for a lot of people.
It's a big transition, but hey, I mean, I wouldn't mind not having to use plastic bags all the time. Like, I don't care, you know what I mean? But hey, to each his own.
What did you think about that Triple B's?
The Triple B situation? I don't know, man. I see my man David and Rose rocking out back there, man, with our people from
Cult of Individuality, Dallas Barbecue.
Yeah, man, that was a cool situation. I seen everybody was able to get our gifts.
So what that means is for everybody out there that's wondering, it's Triple B's barbecue, booze, and bud. So it's basically like a variety event where 15, 20 influencers get together in a large space and basically enjoy barbecue, bud, and booze, and everybody else tunes in virtually. And yesterday was the first beta test, and it went really well. Right now, like I said, there's enough doom and gloom out there. I think people need entertainment and events. How they look like now, the new normal, nobody knows, but it's good to see people being innovative and trying new ways to do events.
Yeah, man, because shit, I mean, regardless, right? So let's say COVID and everything disappeared tomorrow. There's still going to be a new normal. I know everybody kind of came outside, but everybody's outside, but we're still wearing masks and we're still wearing gloves. And
no more high fives.
And no more high fives. There's a bunch of elbows and pounds, and everybody's still kind of iffy, and, it is what it is, right? Because that's the new normal. So
no more sharing the blunt.
No more sharing blunts. No.
Sharing culture in cannabis, that's a thing of the past.
Yeah. It's a thing of the past. I mean, I was already kind of smoking blunts solo, but I would still love to smoke with people. So I'll bring enough for example, now I know I'm gonna smoke by myself, but I'll bring enough for Ralph to smoke too, so we can smoke together. You know what I mean? Because this is kind of
it's a different sharing culture now.
Yeah, it's a different sharing culture. You know what I mean? So it's like, yo, Ralph, look, I got some new bud that I grabbed, so here you go, let's smoke together. You know what I mean? That's basically what that is. So now it's no more smoking together. That shit is gone. So I'm glad that somebody's trying, you know what I mean? Because that's basically what it is. So that I just saw that the Triple Bs are trying, yo, let's try to
And you felt that even though they were trying, how hype the community got over it, because people just excited for something new, some kind of event to look forward, some kind of vibe to attach themselves to.
Yeah, man. How about people hit me up? I didn't even know what was going on. People hit me up and they called me yo, but why you didn't invite me? What's going on? Yo, the cookout and all that shit. I said, oh shit, but wait, it's not an actual cookout. It's a virtual thing, and and I'm not even there. That David and Rose. They wanted Rose to go roll a Rose blunt and stuff like that. So chill. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? But that kind of, like you said, that kind of shocked me. I'm like, oh, that's good, man. People got hype about it.
Yeah, because they were basically trying to find the happy medium, because everything has been virtual for the last couple of months. But they mixed live with virtual, because you can't get 200 people together, but you can get 20 people together in a large space, and everybody else could be tuned in virtually. So it was like a hybrid of both.
Mm-hmm. And I seen all different people. I seen different people tune in. I seen they had Donna as a host. Then I seen Dave East tuned in.
Casanova
tuned in.
Lady Luck
tuned in.
DJ Blue Diamond. Shout out to her. Mm-hmm. So it was definitely a cool vibe. Swipey also.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mr. Swiper.
Hey, if you ain't spinning, you ain't winning. Yo, what you got there, my brother? What's going on? You got the munchies? What's going on?
You know what else we got to talk about that I feel like nobody's really talking about? For New Yorkers like me and you that were so easily used to access food 24 hours a day, any kind of cuisine you could think of.
New Yorkers that don't cook.
it's like a science project to get some food. It's like a science project.
Hardest thing to get munchies, guys, because the only thing open 24 hours a day now is the motherfucking deli. And at some point, you know, it's only so much you can get from the deli, right? So we try to find all the super late night spots all over the city. This shit is no joke. It is hard as hell. It's getting a little bit easier now, but you still have to be out and about early. And, you know, sometimes we're like late night crawlers. So it's like, shit, it's the only time we get to eat.
I never ate so many home cooked foods and meals in my life, and also, you know, so many different like takeout. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I miss sitting down in a restaurant and getting served and the ambiance and all these things. Like, you know, you take things for granted, and now you're like, damn, because even if I could get food from my favorite restaurant, but it's takeout, it's not the same to me.
Oh man, I know. I feel bad for you, my brother. I know you used to talking to a million people at the same time. I know you only got me around, and I'm driving you crazy, David and Ralph. But I know you used to go to the restaurant, talking to the waiter, talking to the manager, the host, the person who's sitting next to us, the stranger that just tapped you by mistake, whatever it is. I know you miss talking to your people.
Yeah, man, because it's a whole experience when you're eating that way. Yo, what you got over there on your plate? What's that over there? You know what I mean? It's a whole vibe to that
It's a whole
takeout
vibe.
doesn't provide.
No, you're absolutely correct. There's always it's a aura of an energy of everybody in the room that's eating, and you don't know where they came from, and they're bringing their own experience to dinner, because it's like this is where everybody kind of chills, right? You're getting a drink and you're eating, and everybody's kind of loose, and you start talking shit. So you kind of feel that energy.
And look, it's crazy because I don't drink unless it's socially. I haven't had a drink in forever, since
real.
like 4 months, because
Yeah.
if I didn't have a glass of wine at dinner, or have a drink when there's an occasion or something, a nightclub or
No
bar,
sense.
that's it. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's no reason, because it's like that's part of the whole experience.
Yep. It's like a nice little drink, and you get a little loose and stuff like that. But what we've been doing is smoking more. I seen you. I mean, I've been smoking more.
Yeah. I've been smoking, and I've been taking my edibles at night.
I see you, my G. I know,
me
man.
sleep
It's
like the
going
heavyweight
down.
champion of the
I know
world.
we got you stressed, my brother. We can't. We not. You know, you're not around people, and I know. But it's all right, my brother. You know, we gonna speak this into existence when everything is super outside and everybody's outside. We gonna have the Happy Monkey Festival and like Happy Monkey VIP tent on the side of science, some fly shit, and you gonna be around 1 billion people that you could talk to, my brother. We gonna have 1,001 strangers for
I'm
you
a
to talk
man
to, because that's
of
what
the
you like.
people.
You don't give a
I'm a
fuck what
man
they
of the
are,
people.
whether they're a janitor or they're the president of the United States. You just want to talk to somebody.
I'm a man of the people.
I know you are,
I
my
feed
brother.
off the energy of the people. You know? And you guys are cool, but you know, I need more than you guys. You know what I mean? I need more people.
I feel bad for you, my brother, because you've been stuck with us for the last 6 months. It's been just us. But you know me, I just been cruising through the not having to deal with a lot of people, because that's your department. So,
And what do you think? I think also, not just me, I think after the whole COVID thing, I think the edible consumption has gone through the roof, because
Hell yeah, even
so
me,
many
I've been
people,
eating a little bit of
so many
edibles
people
now.
are smoking less and taking more edibles.
Yeah, man, because remember, it's a lung thing, right? So everybody was just scared of the whole, like, getting some sort of infection or some shit smoking. And they're like, yo, a lot of like people are like, yo, I'm gonna eat edibles, fuck that shit, And a lot of people, and how about this? I know it's fucked up, and like again, it's been tense and everything's been fucked up, COVID, all this bullshit. But a lot of people are learning about cannabis now. Like, there's like a lot of new people. Like I said before, my mom is even like a little bit interested now in talking about these things. It's like things are kind of changing from what I've been seeing. You know what I mean? So as far as like information and like different people that wouldn't even look that way before are now like looking at it as far as like alternatives, because they're getting older, they're getting sick, and they're trying to like maybe not be on pills and stuff like that. So
What I think played a major part in that, because we all know it's like the mental stigma. I think what played a major part in that was during the quarantine when they shut all businesses down, that they made cannabis essential in a lot of states. And I think that helps like a lot of the older people that were trying to be, politically correct and not be a part of it because of the stigma, feel like, oh, so it's essential, so it is okay.
right.
I think that played a big role in it.
And also, it's just, older folks, they listen to the news. They watch the news a lot.
Exactly.
And even the news, people been like, all for it. And like the government and Cuomo has been supposed to be passing something this year. You know what I mean? So it's like they've been watching all these positive reviews happening and like positive media that's happening. And, this is the wave, man. Cannabis is the wave. We've been trying to tell everybody, man. But, I guess it's definitely not the wrong time. It's definitely the best time because we are alive and we are here. And I want to be present for all this shit to change. I want to see it.
And I think it's all around society because on one of my last episodes, Happy Monkey Happy Hour with Vlad, I had two doctors on, Dr. Monica Tang and Dr. Monica Villalpando, and they were breaking down that aside from, the obvious medical situations that are going on now in some states, that, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Monica Tang is working on educating doctors on the endocannabinoid system because even doctors need to be educated because they haven't really allowed them to learn about it and to make it a part of their practice. So there's people like Monica that are actually taking their time to break it down to a lot of the doctors that perform, that practice medicine every day to help them understand the medicinal benefits of it. So I think it's just like, you know what I mean? I feel like so the world is so crazy right now and there's so many things happening. I think it's bringing cannabis to the epicenter of it because it's necessary in these times of stress and crisis for people to be able to cope.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I agree. I ain't gonna lie. How many podcasts we got in already right now? We got like 35,
35 weeks
some shit like that.
strong.
We gotta,
Haven't missed
we've been
a
rocking,
Monday,
right?
pound for pound.
My man has become the Walter Cronkite out this bitch at cannabis. My man got all the professionals. I know Ralph and David, y'all been helping, but he been on his wave heavy. I ain't gonna lie. Like, you'll be on your shit.
It's like I told you. It's
Spitting
like
bars.
it's that I look at people like books, right? And the more people I interact with, the more books I read, because my books are people, and us, because we have the fortune of the way we're doing things, being the heart of cannabis in New York City. I get to talk to doctors, CEOs, lawyers, all these people,
yeah.
and I soak up knowledge from all of them,
Yes,
and it
you
helps
do.
me add to my data bank, and
Yeah, nah, you spitting bars, man. I ain't even mad at that, man. Me and my man Ralph is impressed. I'm like, yo, oh shit, it goes down. I'm like, oh, that's my man right there. What, nigga?
Nah, but I think you too also, as I've learned how to, bridge the gap when we talk to some big corporate person and the culture person. I think you've already gotten enough knowledge to be able to have a conversation with anybody also.
Yeah, I get nice every once in a while. I speak nice and shit, and I just be proper and speak well, and yeah, you're the man. But they all want to feel part of what's going on, and that's the one thing that people need to understand, that everybody wants to be involved with everybody else. This is what we on planet Earth together. So whether you're corporate or you're the janitor, wherever the fun at, that's where people want to be at.
People want to be with the fun.
You know what I mean?
That's
Wherever
true.
where the fun at, wherever the vibe is at, wherever the love is at, that's where people want to be. No matter what, motherfucker, wherever you come from.
And there's
right?
few things left on this earth that so many people agree with, like cannabis.
Exactly.
And I think that's why it's being the conduit to bring humanity back together in a lot of
Yes.
aspects, because
agree.
it's the one thing that's left that like most people agree with.
Absolutely, I agree. Not only they agree with, they just like it's a different connection than having a drink with a person. You understand? Because having a couple drinks with a person, at some point, things could get misunderstood. All sorts of shit, different shit can happen. smoking with someone is a different types of it's deeper, you know what I mean? Because even if you don't know this person, just because y'all both smoke and y'all both enjoy that flower, you guys begin to find things.
And it
that you
creates a
do.
bond.
Right. You begin to find what do we connect with, not what we don't with. You know what I mean? It's like, oh shit, you like blue. I like blue too. Nigga, I like the munchies. You know what I mean? It just goes down. You know what I mean? I've watched it. We've watched these things, bro. We've watched these things in the events. We've documented these things. Watch completely people that even me, like I said, even me and Doug, it was just like different connections with different people that you would never on earth have if it wasn't for this big,
Cannabis is
Yeah.
the common denominator.
Absolutely. Shit was crazy.
So yeah, we are approaching, ladies and gentlemen, our 1 year anniversary, like in 3-4 weeks. That's
Is it?
crazy.
3-4 weeks already? No. What? A month? 2 months? 12 weeks?
12 weeks. I'm sorry, my timing is all fucked up, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know, but we gonna do it, and it's gonna go down, and I think we gonna do like a fucking virtual party or something that day or something. It's gonna go down in the boulevard.
Yeah,
I
man.
think we go.
I think 1 year is a big milestone, especially this year to not miss a Monday during all the madness, crisis, protests, COVID. It's been like, definitely, a big milestone to keep the people informed during these crazy times.
Absolutely, brother. Just to keep that consistency is crazy, and we are still here, and hopefully, we'll make it all the way to the 1 year anniversary. We'll visualize that shit. I think we probably might have to pick a different location because it might have to be bigger. People might want to come and visit, and it goes down. I think it's just gonna. I think it's gonna be crazy. I think it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have some maybe smoke up. We go smoke it up crazy. Obviously, I think it's gonna be dope, man. I think I'm proud of what we've done already because, like I said, no media training. We've never ever in life done anything.
And I think that the reason that it's been like so organic, so smooth for us is that a lot of it is that we're just being the voice for the city and the Northeast and the tri-state area, and we're just highlighting a lot of stuff that is normal to us and to the community and the culture over here, but not normal to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, and we just became the voice for it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, like you said, we were fortunate enough to have the situation to where people do want to talk about their situation in life with us, as far as cannabis and what their company is and what they're about, and so why not? We all thought to ourselves, why not give these people a platform? Why not give us that platform? Give everybody else a platform. There's no money in this. We're not making money. We don't got all these heavy sponsors. They're not giving us checks and none of this shit. This is just us taking out our time. The same way the people who call in, the same the people who come in, they don't do this shit for money. We don't pay them. You know what I mean? So this is everybody in the cannabis industry, literally. Putting on their boots and coming out and getting on their promotion wave and like trying to get their message out there. And why not? If we got the platform, why not send their message out there? Especially if we believe in them, you know what I mean? So if you got a voice, let's say it, man. We've had all sorts of different guests. You know what I mean? We've had fucking Hawk Newsom that has, he's Black Lives Matter, the leader of Black Lives Matter in New York City. Not necessarily a cannabis he don't have a cannabis company or anything like that, but he's definitely pro cannabis.
And like we always say, cannabis is such a great equalizer, even when it comes to civil rights and oppression of people and marginalized people and law enforcement. It plays a role in everything. It seems like cannabis is in the center of everything, no matter what the subject, no matter what the topic. It's like cannabis plays a role in some way, somehow.
Absolutely, man. And hopefully, things do actually change, and it's not just talk and propaganda. And we make things happen. People got to start making shit happen. So what happens is it always starts with us. We always got some shit, right? Because HappyMunkey, we don't, like I said, we're not politicians or nothing like that, but we provoke things and we like to make people, react. So we're gonna start that little that showing people who's pro cannabis. And
and
who's
more
for our
importantly,
cause.
I feel like people need to really focus on their local, you know what I mean, like representatives of
the people who are in our local districts.
Yeah, because it starts there, and I feel like once we put out the information, who's pro cannabis and who not, that'll help people, making a decision outside of party politics. You know what I mean? Because it's like at this point, people are kind of tired of that. People want to know how they are going to get affected and how the things that they believe in are going to be a difference. So I think that that's going to be good because we're going to just lay out the information for the people, and then we just ask that you vote. It doesn't matter how or who or whatever. Just be part of the process, especially with the local politicians, because that's where it starts and that's who affects us the most.
Absolutely. So definitely, just like we said, man, we're not CNN, but definitely we're just trying to provoke you to get out there and figure out who is who and what's what. You know what I mean? And if we gotta help you guys with just showing you who's who and what's what, then that's I guess that's something we gonna have to start doing. And luckily my man David is always ahead of these things. And he definitely got a plan, and you guys will be hearing and seeing about what we're talking about now. Shout out to everybody out there in the Happy Monkey world, the Happy Monkey members, all the original supporters, everybody who's, give us a lot of love from the beginning to the now. You guys, we love you guys. We thank you guys. We got a lot of new shit for you people coming up soon.
And that's the thing. I feel like people don't understand that it's like we didn't just wake up and choose this path and all this stuff. The people chose us to represent them out here as far as like the culture in New York City and the tri-state area. And we're just a conduit for them because we're nobody without them believing in us. All those day ones that you said, all the people that have been like, pushing us to do things that we thought we couldn't even do.
Absolutely. They're like, yo, man, because the one thing I remember when it reached out to you to do the source, and you looked at me like, yo, the source? I said, hell yeah. I didn't even think so. I said, hell yeah. He was like, I said, hell yeah, you can do. You've already done these things. Like this is easy, bro. You speak in front of people all the fucking time, and if they're calling you for this, it's because they know. You know what I mean? They know you're ready for this. They want your presence there. They want your opinion there. They want your thoughts. They don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? How it comes out. They know you speak well already. They seen you and they talk to you already. So when Leo saw us, Leo was like, oh, these motherfuckers. Yeah, shout out to Leo Bridgewater. But Leo was like, oh, look at these motherfuckers. And it was fun to watch because it's like, there you go, brother, because this is where it starts. And, what better to start, in a platform next to the legendary Branson and fucking, you know what I mean? That was crazy,
The Sheeta.
The super legendary Dashita. She will be, and she's definitely making a mark out here. So definitely shout out to Dashita Dawson.
That was my first public speaking gig, and like you said, it was humbling to be next to all these big, amazing, intelligent people, and then for me to make my little speech that I just came off the top with, and to get like a standing ovation, and for everybody to go crazy like that was like a big sign to me that, you know what I mean, people can relate to the way we break things down.
Yeah, that was crazy, man. And I'm definitely from there. I already knew, like, people gonna want this man to talk everywhere, and it's gonna go down. Look at that. You're gonna do the Ebony thing, you know what I mean? Juneteenth, brother. You know what I mean? That's real big, brother. That's
this
real.
year, nobody's rocking with the 4th of July. It's all about Juneteenth.
4th of July? What's the 4th of July, man? That's just another day. That's just another day where the hood get to blow up firecrackers and shit like that. It get crazy. That's it. Juneteenth. You're speaking for Ebony. In the Ebony virtual event, right? That's
Ebony's hosting it, and it's the first time that Ebony's associating themselves with cannabis.
The cannabis. They need to, and one way somehow, even that's gonna have to start the whole cannabis industry on that part. That's gonna have to start diversifying as well. You know what I mean? Because that's what's happening. All this Black Lives Matter is bringing out a lot of hidden, all this hidden racism and like systemic
Stigmas and all this
stigmas
stuff.
and the numbers, because it's not about now. Before, right now it's just a lot of whoever's a parent. Now they're showing who's doing it through the numbers. You know what I mean? Like, who's on your board? Who's on the team? What's going on with this? What's going on with that? So now that's going to have to diversify a little bit more. Like, who's holding all the licenses in one state? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now it's like basically after all the protests and everything that has occurred, like, just society is holding big corporate companies, whether cannabis or otherwise, accountable, and it's not just good enough to put a black box on your screen. It has to be shown on your board, on your corporate structure. At the top. How many people of color do you have there? What are you doing for people of color? So it's now gone more in depth where, companies in society are gonna be held accountable if they're not moving correctly out here in these streets.
Not moving correctly out here in these streets. I mean, it's gonna be crazy, and and a lot of people are not staying quiet, and and you shouldn't, if you should not stay quiet. Like I said, there's a lot of us, especially in New York City, specifically New York City. I can't talk about any other state or city, but I can talk about ours, because I'm a statistic here too. So specifically in New York City, there should be some sort of way where a lot of people who were affected by the war on cannabis, because I'm gonna talk about cannabis, how do they get back in the system? You know what I mean? Like, how are they able to own a dispensary? How are they able to work for a dispensary
Without having $100 million?
Without having $100 million, how does that happen?
Yeah,
That's
what we need to get to.
Because that's not fair. You know what I mean? Not everybody's gonna be. Not everybody's a Vlad or a Happy Monkey where we were able to network with people, whatever the case may be. And we don't have the money, but we know everyone. You know what I mean? It's, if you don't go that route where we worked for the last couple of years to know everyone and to kind of know all these different positions and how things work. How does one get a chance?
And then, at a bare minimum, even aside from the actual ownership of people of color, all right, it makes sense. Sometimes, they will have to end up being the owners. How many people in your corporate structures of color?
Right.
At least that, right?
Yeah, your team, there has to be women and people of color on your team, right?
Yeah.
Is there not? What?
And what I think that is gonna start coming to realization now in the near future is that it's not only just a human and an empathy thing, it's also a good business thing, because when you have a female, when you have, different people on your board, people of color, gay, straight, whatever.
Yeah, everybody brings something to the table.
Exactly. No, and you get to understand all the demographics, and you get to target all the. So it's going to be better for your business to have such a diverse board.
Absolutely. Speaking from a capitalist point of view right there, my friend. That's right.
There you go.
Because come on, my brother, if we trying to sell this bottle of water, I ain't trying to sell this bottle of water to one demographic group of people. I'm trying to sell it to everybody on earth.
So I think they're gonna come to realize that aside from it just being the right thing to do, it's also gonna be a profitable thing to do, because it's gonna make your company better to have all these different point of views and all these different ways to not leave anybody out of your product and your company.
Exactly. That makes all the sense in the world, my friend. So it's basically this cannabis industry, I think, will bring all sorts of diversity and all sorts of money and all sorts of opportunities and jobs and all sorts of shit if they let it know. If we make sure that they do right by us and many other people like us, because they need to include everyone, and everyone will make money, and America will be fucking awesome.
Yeah, I just think that in general, I was talking about this the other day, like I said, when these doctors were on the show, that I just think in general, it's just going to make the world a better place from a medicinal aspect, from a mental health aspect, to just even like people having less conflict. Like, it's going to bring violence down, because we all know you could be the biggest gangster, biggest murderer in the world, and everybody is smoking a joint, and there's a lot less likely that there will be any type of, you know what I mean, conflict.
Absolutely, man. Get the fuck out of here. And I'm like a super like Aggie guy in the morning, and like, you know, you get in that car, you got a little bit of road rage, but as you know, as soon as you smoke that joint, you know, and you kind of like take a deep breath, and you're like, all right, you know, the kind of anxiety, you kind of smoke the anxiety and the road rage away.
Like my friend Ralph says, breathe.
Breathe, my brother. You know what I mean? It's like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Because shit, bro. Shit.
So I think that's what's going to happen. That's why it's going to change the world, because aside from all the things that are obvious, I think the conflict of people will go down tremendously. Violent crimes will go down tremendously, because nobody wants to be violent when they're high. I just haven't seen it in my research out here in the field.
Nah, I mean, you know, yeah. In my past experience of life, we've smoked with all sorts of characters, you would say, in the most politest way that I can say it. Nigga, we smoked in the hood with all sorts of niggas, and they, in that moment of life, were very, very good people, and definitely were not thinking of doing any sorts of crime activity at the moment.
And then we seen both, because we've been out with them to a bar or a club, and we see what side of that that brings out, which is more hostile, more violent.
Absolutely.
And when you bring them to a cannabis event, it's the total opposite side of the person.
I've seen grown ass gangster motherfuckers put that real big smile as soon as they see all different flavors of like weed and shit like that. Yo, I remember the first time I walked into a dispensary in California with you. It was crazy. Like I forgot. I
Felt like you were in Disneyland.
Yeah,
huh?
I couldn't believe it. I was like, nah, this is so fucking crazy shit. I said, so y'all just got the weed? Y'all just out here? Absolutely. Your man, what was your man? We bumped into the Jolly Green Giant. Man,
The Jolly Green Giant.
Jolly Green Giant. Real big, cool white dude. Jolly Green Giant, seeing all these flavors, the shit had me mesmerized. You know what I mean? So I get it. You know what I mean? So it don't matter what walk of life you're in, as soon as you kind of see these things, instantly your mind goes into happiness. So fuck that you're a gangster, fuck that you're a murderer, fuck all this shit.
Fuck what you like and what you don't like. At that moment, everybody is 90% of the time, everybody's dealing with issues in their life. And at that moment, when they're smoking that joint, they both have in common that they're trying to forget about their issues, whatever they are.
Man, some happy shit, bro. It's hilarious, man. We've watched it, man. We've watched it, bro. We've watched rappers, these like real hood rappers, sit with like a doctor and they talk about whatever fucking song is playing at the moment, and it's dope. You get to watch these people unite behind that moment, and they was just smoking weed together. It was no big deal.
You know what? Even more, like what we said about everybody coming out, how everybody went to phase 10, and the energy's crazy in the city. Another thing is that me and you not into it, but we know how many people are. A big thing for people with sports.
Oh,
and there's no sports no more. So you want them to stay home with no sports? It's not gonna happen.
Oh my God! All our friends are into sports.
Everybody's into sports. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So now, on top of everything we said, it's summer. You don't have no sports. You think people have to go outside and do something?
They gotta do something, you know. We've always seen the white people jogging though. They've been jogging the whole time.
Yeah, white people, you know, minorities and people of color sing through their struggles. White people jog through their struggles. That's the way it goes. They jog. The world comes to an end. They still jogging.
They are jogging. They outside of these streets jogging.
Yeah. No matter what's going on, that is their therapy. They're going to jog. Nuclear bombs, world coming in, they're going to jog. They're going to jog.
Man, you know, we gonna laugh and make jokes about, you know, the nigga coming, nigga walking through the door coughing. Oh, you got COVID, nigga. You know, nigga started, you know, we retarded. But white people jogging.
They are jogging. That's not going to stop.
Oh man, everybody. So definitely, I don't know, man. It's been a hell of a ride. We out here. We still out here. Happy Monkey. Our team is very strong, and I can't be more proud than for everybody. You know, Ralph, David, Tech, Jennifer, I Am Black Rose, Original and the Weekend Warriors. Shout out to them. They've been doing a fucking really hell job. Shout out to my man Jose, definitely Puffington in the building. Definitely check out Puff and Puffs. Check out all the new shows we got going on. Valid, not valid. Happy Monkey ASMR. Happy Monkey Happy Hour with my man Vladimir. Yes, sir. Check out all that shit. He got mad exclusive guests that we don't even got on the podcast. So definitely check that out. What else we got going on in the motherfucker? We got all. So if you haven't checked us out on our website, we are
Valid, not valid.
We definitely we got a lot of things coming up soon, and like I said before, hopefully we speaking them into existence. Happy Monkey Festival.
What number are we up to, David, with the EMAG?
Ooh, we definitely got
David?
the EMAG with my man David. We up to number 7 right now.
7?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 7.
Check
so
us out if you
it
want to
went
sign
from
up.
a newsletter to an EMAG, ladies and gentlemen, because it started maybe like 10, 15 pages. Now we're up
Yeah,
to
now it's crazy.
45 pages, and we have contributors,
Absolutely.
writers from the Boston Globe contributing, High Times,
Yes, sir.
Rolling Stones.
Yes,
so
sir.
it started fun and games, but it has turned into like a real legitimate magazine, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
it's-
So
it's-
if you're not a part of it, go to happymonkey.com and sign up for the EMAG,
Yes,
because
sir.
you can definitely learn a lot from these amazing writers breaking down the cannabis culture and the corporate.
Guys, this is basically a way to get exclusive shit from Happy Monkey. You know what I'm saying? Like, just go ahead and sign up anyway. It's mad free. It don't matter. And it's also a way, if you've never been to the past events that we used to do, this is basically a way to get glimpse of all the people that we all basically has shown love, and they all giving us a piece of some sort of writing or some sort of content and like new shit. And every time we come out with new shit, that's the first place we put it out in. You know what I mean? So if you want to know like real good stuff about us, and if you want to ask us questions, like that's the way to go about it. You know what I mean? You sign up, you want to ask Vladimir about stuff about Happy Monkey, Ramon, Ralph, everybody who's there, we here, hit us up. You know what I mean? We also got a hotline. You want to leave us a voicemail where you basically get featured in the beginning of the podcast. Shout yourself out. You know what I mean? Do what it do.
Like I said earlier, ladies and gentlemen, we are the voice for you. So if there's any topics, anything going on in cannabis or in life that you think we should be addressing, feel free to let us know, because like I said, we're the voice for you guys. You know what I mean? And we just happen to talk about the type of things that you guys want to hear. So we need all the insight we could get. So anything you guys got in mind, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Absolutely, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for watching. How it goes.
Ladies and gentlemen, never forget, you're too blessed to be stressed. Things that get greater later. Till the next episode, Vlad and Ramon checking out. Peace, love, and happiness. Do the right thing like Spike Lee, guys.
Boom, motherfuckers. Everybody, what's going on? Today's a very special episode because we speaking straight to the motherland, everybody. If you don't understand what the motherland is, I'm talking about the motherland of all Earth, Africa, everybody. We got this very, very intelligent human being, and he is definitely the chief knowledge officer of the New Frontier Data. So, motherfuckers, we got a smart black man in the building to talk to you about some numbers, everybody. Please, Vlad, let him know the details of this introduction.
Yeah, this young man right here has done so many amazing things in this industry. John Kaglia, he's not only a family of the Happy Monkey, but also in the cannabis industry has definitely help us get a lot of information that otherwise we wouldn't have. Our brother from another, John Kaglia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Round of applause, everybody. Yes, everybody. Please, John, reintroduce yourself. Let everybody in the Happy Monkey world know where to find you, your Instagram, all the good stuff, websites, whatever.
Thanks very much for the introduction, and thank you to the Happy Monkey crew for inviting me to be a part of this. Just deeply humbled to be part of this conversation, and given how much I respect what you guys have built in New York and kind of a global brand out of the world's most exciting city. So my name is John Kaglia. I'm the Chief Knowledge Officer with New Frontier Data. And for those of you who don't know us, New Frontier Data is a research data and analytics firm focused on the legal cannabis industry. So we work with investors, business owners, business operators, and governments, both policymakers and regulators, to help them understand both where the cannabis industry is today, and critically to understand where the cannabis industry is going. We're not an advocacy organization. We generally don't take a position for legalization or on where this industry, on how it should be regulated, but rather we view our mission and mandate as providing deeply researched, rigorously analyzed, and fiercely objective insights into the size, growth, and evolution of this extraordinary industry. So,
and you're calling in, John, from Kenya, correct?
I am calling in from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm actually born and raised in Nairobi. And when the COVID pandemic broke out, my parents are based here. I was able to sneak in on one of the last flights into the country.
Oh, you were lucky.
Sheltering in place here for the past nearly 3 months.
No, definitely, man. We appreciate you taking out the time to check in with us and really give us a sky views perspective on everything that's happening right now, because you got that opportunity to go out there and you kind of knowing the lay of the land, probably have got a good chance to analyze the industry from the outside looking in. So I'm very interested in hearing your perspective, because, me and Ramon talk about on the show over here all the time that we feel like this era in history, just in general, in society, is going to be like BC and AD, like before Christ and after death, because it's like that historic, and it's like there's going to be pre-COVID cannabis industry, post-COVID cannabis industry. So my question to you, after you doing so much knowledge, so much different research and data, where do you see it shifting to as far as like the new normal from what it was before?
That's a great question. And, it's something that we've been thinking really deeply about, because we completely agree. COVID is going to be an inflection point in the way we think about where cannabis fits in American society, in fact, where cannabis sits in global society. And we think that's going to happen for a few reasons, and in no particular order. One is this idea that cannabis businesses have been declared essential in virtually every state where it's legal. I mean, for those of us who've been in the space for a while, the thought that it happened so quickly, that we would have gone from these really hard-fought battles for legalization to cannabis being one of the few places in most states where you can still walk into a store, where you can still get your product delivered when the rest of the state is shut down, and the speed with which lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were willing to make that decision is just an extraordinary reflection of how quickly this has shifted across the country. And it raises a really important kind of question on a few levels. One, it shows that in the states where it's legal, particularly in the medical states, the lawmakers, the physician community have recognized that cannabis is delivering real value to patients. And if the cannabis industry has been shut down, there's a lot of patients whose access to medical cannabis would have been disrupted, and that would not be good. So there's, I think that was a really strong affirmative statement for the industry on the value of cannabis legalization and the value of medical cannabis. Second, it's the revenue that it represents for governments and government agencies. The governments are making a lot of money off of this industry. We just did an analysis of Colorado. In 6 years, the government has raised over $1 billion in tax revenues. Now, that may not be a huge amount relative to the state's total budget, But when you're thinking about an extra $1 billion toward education, toward social programs,
That's huge.
particularly at a time like this, when you're seeing nearly a quarter of the workforce out of work, the every penny counts, every dollar counts, and you can't discount the incremental value that cannabis legalization presents for the industry. So this idea of cannabis being essential now raises the stakes for a broad national debate, because all of the people who are living in states where it's not legal are saying, how can it be legal in Colorado? And we don't have it in Virginia. We don't have it in... And I think that's going to raise an interesting question, both in the states where it's not legal and at the national level, at the federal level. Because how can this business be essential in 33 states in the union, but not have access to real banking, not have access or be taxed at multiples of the rest of the consumer economy? These are questions that that declaration of cannabis being essential now raises a lot more pressure on those who've opposed fundamental reform. Second, I think we're going to see some really interesting changes in the way consumers consume cannabis. We're talking about this idea of potentially the desocialization of cannabis consumption. I've been struck by how much kind of on social media I've been seeing puff, puff, don't pass, where it used to be,
the sharing culture is like reversing.
Absolutely. And one of the things that about the way cannabis was consumed socially that just always fascinated me is, even in a way that you don't generally tend to see in alcohol, I have seen people sit around a table and consume cannabis that have in no other circumstances been in the same environment. It's completely different walks of life, but cannabis was the one unifying thing that brought them together.
Mm-hmm.
So in kind of this aspect of social consumption, it's like, pass it around, and that sense of community and commune around cannabis. In an environment where we're talking about a highly contagious product, how does that evolve when you're consuming amongst strangers? We've already seen in some of our data that consumers are starting to rethink about the way they consume, and it's less about not consuming socially, but rather whether or not they're sharing what they're consuming. So, people, we may start to see a much greater prevalence of things like your own joint holder. So you're still sharing a joint, but you're putting your own cap on. People coming to parties with their own pipe heads or bringing their own devices. You may start seeing, rather than buying the 1 gram joint that you're going to share with your mates, you buy 1 to 3 third gram joint, and that's what you each have your own, but you're all consuming the same product.
Exactly.
I think there's going to be some disruption to the way people consume, and depending on how long this pandemic goes on, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and what new product opportunities it creates. I don't think we're going to see a reduction in people consuming socially, but I think they're going to think differently about the way they share in those communal settings. Third, I actually think we're going to start seeing a lot more cannabis use. And I say that because when we think about why people consume cannabis, for people who don't really understand what recreational cannabis means, I think it's too easy to think about recreational meaning kind of social, so drinking it like you would at a bar and just get drunk. But our data tells us that beyond relaxation, the main reasons why people consume cannabis are to reduce stress, to alleviate anxiety, to help them fall asleep, and to help them stay asleep when they're falling asleep. So it's really wellness driven, not kind of social party group oriented. And so if we think about anxiety, stress relief, help sleeping, and relaxation, at a time when we're going through the biggest kind of social and economic upheaval of our time, people are more stressed than they've ever been. A quarter of our workforce is out of work. People are stuck at home with their kids in a way that they've never been before. I know parents who are about to jump out the window, they're just pulling their hair. You have the kids 3 months in of homeschooling. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
So with that level of stress, with that level of anxiety, I think that there's a lot of people who may have been very infrequent cannabis consumers who are now using it, or who are now consuming more frequently to alleviate some of that. And I think there's also going to be people who may not necessarily have considered cannabis, but in this context of being at home, having a lot more time on their hands, all of their regular social activities have been canceled. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll consume it. And we're actually starting to see that reflected in the sales data, because Oregon just had its best single month in May of cannabis sales ever. It sold over $100 million of product in May. Astonishing numbers.
Crazy.
And basically that trend of record-breaking sales in May was reflected nationally. So people are consuming more. And I think some of this extra consumption that we're seeing is going to stick post-pandemic.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because we've been seeing here just on a small scale locally how now, you know, like you said, it's not puff, puff, pass. It's like, well, everybody roll their own joint. And we seen these sort of trends happen, and we see that it's a different sharing community. It's not the same anymore. And like you said, because people have had more time on their hands than usual, I can start with myself saying that, you know, I know my consumption's gone up anywhere from 50 to 100%. So I can imagine the majority of the population is kind of the same thing.
So it might actually split there two ways. There's definitely people like who fall into your ilk who are consuming more. I think there's a smaller subset who are now, say, stuck or at home with people who either or an environment where they can't really consume as much, whether it's because they're with their kids. You know, they may prefer to smoke and they don't have access to good edibles, and so they're feeling a little more locked in, where they would have had more opportunities to consume outside the home. But based on what we're seeing, I definitely think the pendulum has swung to people consuming more, even though there's a smaller subset who, because of the constraints of the circumstance, aren't able to consume as much. But even that is, you know, a pretty good case for legalization, because then you can have access to non-combustion products. You can consume a gummy, you can consume a beverage, and you don't have to worry as much about you know, smoking in front of your kid.
And, you know, our data comes from a different place than yours, John. Our data comes from the barbershop. You know that in the urban neighborhoods, you get all the good information from the barbershop. So in the barbershop, what we hear is that edible sales are going through the roof, because on top of everything that you mentioned, COVID was something to do with lungs and breathing. So a lot of people have switched over from smoking to, like you said, you know, either drinking or eating. But mostly here in New York, people don't have access to drinking, so they like cannabis. So mostly it's edibles.
That's a really great point and a really important one, because one of the things we're seeing is, so flower is doing really well. In fact, we're seeing kind of the highest increase in demand for flower. So people are falling back to what they know.
Wait. Before we move forward, real quick, John. So can you just describe to people, like, where do you get your data from? Like, is it like just California, or California, New York City, all major cities? Like, what, you know what I mean? So when you're referring to the data, what are you referring to?
So one of the privileges that we've had at New Frontier Data in the 6 years we've been doing this is we've literally cast the net out completely across the global economy, trying to get any data that tells us about how this industry is evolving. So just a few illustrations. We have partners like point of sale systems who cover markets around the country that are giving us deep insight into how retail sales are trending, what products are doing well, how the different categories are evolving, how much consumers are spending, and all of that. Getting data from states, and this is everything from, you know, we have been collecting monthly patient counts from every state since each state legalized its medical programs. We're looking at really minuscule detail how programs are evolving over time and how different conditions change how quickly a medical program grows. We're getting data from every government on how much taxes they're raising, because that tells us, it's a good proxy for understanding how big the program is and how different types of taxation influence growth. We're getting data from Health and Human Services on national surveys on cannabis use, how many people consume it every month, every year in their lifetimes. So we can see that generational trend over time. And so, you know, we're getting data from public markets, how much are the companies in stock, the publicly traded cannabis companies making, and how you know, are these market shocks, like the insane year that 2019 was, impacting the market valuations of these companies. And while we started doing this first in the US, we scaled that out now globally. And that's given us a really kind of just phenomenal, incredible perspective into how all of these trends are converging into the emergence of a global legal industry.
I have another important question that I want to know because, we do our own analysis and you hear things, but I'm really interested on your take and what the data actually says. How do you see New York State shaping out right now according to your data? And what would you say, what kind of role is it going to play in the future in the cannabis industry?
So that's a great question. And we've been saying for a long time that we think New York is going to be the most consequential market for cannabis, not just in the country, but in the world.
Whoa.
And we say that for a few reasons. One, when you have this intersection of a densely populated megacity, a very affluent megacity, the financial capital of the world, and the epicenter of American cool. Now, California has got its own different kind of cool, but in terms of the way in which New York culture has influenced global trends, there are very few places in the world that have the sort of kind of global extraordinary impact that New York City does specifically. And then a second point, New York is the most visited city in the US. And so once you have legal cannabis in New York City, the impact of having New York be the epicenter of cannatourism, where you have travelers from around the world being exposed to legal cannabis in a way that even a place like Las Vegas is never going to experience. People who come into the New York for the who come into the New York for the UN General Assembly are also not flying to Vegas to go and visit Planet 13, but they are going to be walking down Madison Avenue, and be walking down Fifth Avenue. And so the exposure that they'll have of what legal cannabis can look like will mean that New York is going to be catalytic in the global conversation, particularly as a seat of the UN. It's going to be catalytic in the global conversation around cannabis in the way no other city around the world will be. And that actually not only creates phenomenal opportunity because it's going to mean the amount of revenue that will be generated both from a very large domestic market, but from all the millions of tourists who come in here, is going to be create just an incredibly lucrative opportunity, one. But two, it means that if New York doesn't get it right, there's going to be a lot of people who are leaving saying, we can't have this in our own market. So there's going to be a lot of pressure to make sure that the face of cannabis that New York presents is done in a way that resonates and kind of puts its best foot forward. Because that's going to be what most people who have never thought about what legal cannabis could look like in its own communities will take back to their own markets. And so, if there's a old Spider-Man saying about with great power comes great responsibility, I hope the New York community will understand that, yes, this is going to be a phenomenally lucrative opportunity, and it's going to be a globally defining market. But there's also going to be intense pressure there to get it right, because what people experience in New York will be the message of what cannabis could look like globally. And because it's the seat of the UN, because you're going to have such a huge global audience, the world is going to be watching what New York does in a way that really it's not going to watch what's being done in any other state in the union.
And that's why, we've had our own theories about how things are going to play out. And one of my beliefs is that, New York is so influential and so powerful because all the things you mentioned, that I believe once it goes in New York, especially if it's done correctly, I believe it won't be too long afterwards when it goes federally legal, because I think New York has that much of an impact if it's done correctly, like you said, and the best face and it gets rolled out correctly. I think it won't be too many years afterwards, and after then federally legalization happens.
Yeah, certainly legalization in New York is going to add a huge amount of pressure to driving federal legalization, and would say that from a couple of perspectives. So if you think about the fact that based on our estimates, in 2019, we estimate that the illicit market for New York, the total demand in New York, is about $4.7 billion. That's
That's a underground, not above ground.
That's underground. So that's the capture that's waiting to be taken by by flipping on the switch from legal activation. That doesn't include all of the canna-tourism that will be additive on top of that. That doesn't include all of the new types of consumption that will be based on the product innovation that happens in the legal market that you can't really get in an unregulated market. Nor does it include any of the opportunities that come from the cannabis lounges, the cannabis events, the festivals that can be born out of a regulated market. That's just in product sales, and largely flower product sales. So if you're talking about, a roughly $5 billion market opportunity before you even got out the gate, the scale of opportunity there in terms of putting a huge amount of pressure to make this a legal market nationally, I think it goes up dramatically. And to put that in context, we're estimating that the total U.S. legal market this year is, for 2020 is going to be $19 billion. Just in the states where it's currently legal, so the 33 medical, the 11 recreational, by 2025 are going to be $30 billion in sales. At some point, these numbers the numbers are just getting so substantial that, if you think about a $20 billion market where most of the transactions are still happening without credit cards, it's still a cash-based economy. It's unthinkable. And so as you start adding every state that you incrementally add, I think just adds a huge amount of pressure to the federal government, because at some point, the amount of dollars flowing in this ecosystem mean that you've got to start treating it like a regular part of the economy. And I think that's part of the reason why this 2020 election is actually going to be so important. You've got not only so many states that are vying for election, and we're counting about 8 now that are in play, either confirmed or still trying to get ballots on the initiative. But also there's going to be a lot more new lawmakers who are coming into Congress in the 2021 cycle who are now representing jurisdictions where it's legal. And however they might feel about cannabis, they now have constituents that they need to represent. So regardless of who wins the presidential election, I think there's going to be a very different type of conversation happening in Congress in 2021. But I can say if the Democrat wins the presidential cycle, given virtually every Democratic candidate who ran for president came out saying that they were going to support fundamental federal reform, I think we're going to start to see these dominoes falling very, very quickly.
Now, John, you're obviously a dashing young man, very intelligent, and you know your shit. You could have been doing anything else in the world, right? Because you're obviously a smart man, and if you're good with numbers, you can do anything on this earth, right? So why, out of everything, why collect and analyze cannabis data?
That's a great question. So my background is in market research. I'm an academic at heart. I'm an information junkie.
What did you do prior to nuances data?
So my background is in market research and industry analysis. I built my career working with some of the world's largest companies, providing them research at the C-suite to make mission critical decisions. I was working with, the IBMs and the Microsofts and the Accentures of the world, helping them, giving them research to help them solve really major, mission critical questions, whether that's, figuring out global strategies for IBM on the healthcare practice, helping Microsoft figure out the next generation of classroom technology. I was working with one of the big government defense contractors on the next generation armored personnel carriers, like really interesting kind of meaty problems, but all of them research related, trying to use insights into helping them build better solutions. So in 2011, I was working for a research company where one of my roles was to kind of look for new markets that we could go into. And I was watching the run up to the legalization initiative in Colorado. I'd watched the ballot cycle and started looking like this thing could actually not only make it on the ballot, but it could pass. So I did a quick back of the napkin, and I'm thinking, all right, if this thing passes, this could actually be like a real thing. Like this could be a real kind of economy. And so I go to my employers and I tell them, nobody is paying attention to cannabis. Nobody will touch this for years to come. we could go into cannabis now and we would really be the only game in town. Like nobody's paying attention to it. Now, when they picked their jaws off the floor because they had not expected me of all people to bring this up as a pretty straight-laced square player. They're like, that sounds interesting. There's no way we can touch it right now. Like, we really conservative guys, great team, but they were just like, this is just too hot. So they're like, why don't you just kind of keep an eye on this, and we'll keep updating us, and then we'll make a decision on whether or not to go into the space. So literally it became a pet project. Initially started with me carving out a few hours a month just to see what was going, how it was evolving. And the more I was looking at it, literally the more obsessed I was getting. So I'd report out every 3 to 6 months on what I was seeing. I'm like, this is nuts. Like, this is actually happening. Colorado voted to pass it. Sales started going through the roof. And I'm coming in and doing these kind of short briefings saying, all right, this is now becoming a thing. And they're like, that's amazing. That's incredible, but not yet, not yet. So that was the cycle for the next 3.5 years. And by this point, I am fully obsessed. Like, literally I'm racing home from work so I can start my cannabis research, just getting my mind blown. So fast forward to the summer of 2014. I'd actually gone to Brazil for the World Cup on just a crazy leap of faith trip.
Nice. That's a crazy leap of faith trip. That sounds super adventurous. That's like a bucket list
for me.
Because going to Brazil is one thing, but going to Brazil for the World Cup, that's like the biggest event in the world type of situation, brother. Like,
and you talk about bucket list. Even though, I'd known the World Cup had been coming for a while. Like, I was just, there was so much going on. I was like, there's no way I'm going to make it. And then, I just, one afternoon, I was talking to a mate and she was telling me, like, I don't know if you recall, there was a lot of protests in Brazil right before the World Cup. So people were actually canceling their trips right before the tournament started. And I was like, maybe. So I do quick Google. I'm like, shit, I can get a ticket. Found a hotel. I'm like, I'm going. So it was literally 9 days between the moment I started deciding and the time I was on the plane. And the way that trip came together was just, you talk about leap of faith convergence. This random hotel I'd picked in a city I'd never heard of, Fortaleza. This random hotel I'd picked ended up being the hotel where both the Ghanaian team and the Ivory Coast team were staying.
Oh, man.
So I walk in and the concierge is like, yeah, we're going to need you to wear this wristband while you're here. When the teams arrive, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, the team, Ghana arrives tomorrow. Now, as an African, literally just mind blowing.
Yeah, mind blowing. That must have been crazy.
It turned out to be that kind of trip. So I come home from the World Cup. I was there. I watched 2 matches, traveled around the country. Anyway, come home, and I'm like just feeling like the universe is trying to tell me something. I got home in time to watch the World Cup final. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to go and watch it. And for some reason, I'm feeling like there's this bar in DC. It's not even a place you would think to go and watch the World Cup final after the kind of trip I've been on. You think you'd be going to a sports bar where everybody's all in. I'm going to like this restaurant, cafe type. But I'm feeling like that's where I should go. So I go to that bar. I'm sitting at the bar on my own. It's middle afternoon. I'm watching this match. And I get introduced to the woman who's sitting next to me, who tells me she's about to start a data analytics company in the cannabis industry. That's how I met my CEO.
Crazy.
Started geeking out at the bar. We missed most of the game, like given that there was such synchronicity,
the mutual chemistry and the passion.
So she's like, "How do you know this much about cannabis?" In 2014, nobody in DC was talking about this as a real industry. So we spent the next handful of hours geeking out at the bar, and that began a conversation that a few months later led me to join as the head of research, and haven't looked back.
And this was 2014, 2015?
This was so we met in the summer of 2014, and I joined officially in January 2015.
Now, John, us talking about global trends, me and Ramon always talk about it because we're banking on it because, like I said, we're of Latin descent and we're from Dominican Republic. So we always, revolve things around how when things go more mainstream and global? How is it going to look like when all these Spanish-speaking countries know that there's a brand that represents them? We're already thinking that way, but I'm interested in the data of global trends in cannabis, not just in Latin countries, but in all countries around the world. And what do you see trending globally?
So that's a great and a really important question. And maybe we'll put it in context of a few things. I continue to be just blown away by how quickly this conversation is evolving globally. And if we think that it has taken 20 years since California legalized to get us to the point of 33 legal states and medical states and 11 recreational states, in the time that we've been doing this, when we first started doing this, there's probably 4 countries around the world where there were meaningful conversations happening about cannabis, whether that's medical cannabis, industrial hemp. Now there's over 70. Just in the past month, we've added Lebanon and Ghana to the list. Lebanon.
That's crazy.
So this conversation is moving just blindingly quickly around the world, and the kind of timeline between the initialization of the conversation and the time these countries are legalizing is happening in a fraction of the time it took for it to happen in the US. Second, just thinking about the scale of global demand. We did a study last year that estimated that there are over 260 million cannabis consumers around the world, and they collectively spend nearly $350 billion on cannabis each year. So that's just for recreational demand, like people spending money on flower. So if you're talking about of $1/3 trillion market opportunity, that doesn't include any of the new kind of novel medical applications. It doesn't include any of the new kind of innovation that's happening with non-flower product forms. And it doesn't include any of the new consumers who may begin to consume as it becomes more socially acceptable. You know, you can very quickly see how this becomes $1 trillion industry if fully activated globally. And so coming back to the question that we began with, which is, you know, this pre-COVID, post-COVID environment. One of the reasons why I think COVID is also going to be a catalyst for accelerating the global opportunity is this idea that there's going to be a lot of countries that are hurting coming out of COVID and are going to be looking for low-hanging fruit ways to stimulate investment, stimulate jobs, get the economies going. Cannabis is one of the few things which people are already spending money on. That money is just not being accounted for in the formal economy. And so unlike other types of new sectors where you're generally taking something out of one part of the bucket and putting it into another part of the legal market, with cannabis, you're literally just taking money out of the unregulated market and putting it into the regulated economy. And so it makes it a really easy way for governments to catalyze or to capture money that's already being spent. And I think for all of the economies that are really hurting after this, we're going to see a lot more consideration of where cannabis can fit in their economic kind of stimulus programs or economic growth programs. So a really kind of prime opportunity for the emergence of legalization across the world.
Yeah, specifically, I wanted to ask you about what do you think about South America and Africa, because I think that those are going to be 2 major players and continents that once they're activated, it's going to be like a domino effect globally.
So no question about that. And maybe starting first with South America. You know, I think it came to as a surprise to many that Uruguay was the first place in the country in the world to legalize full recreational use. But for those who've been studying the Uruguayan model, you know, it just made sense that would be one of the places where it's a small country. It's a surprisingly kind of developed country for where it sits in the world, and with a really progressive view to, you know, using legalization as a way to counteract the narco operators. Then you have countries like Colombia, which have been really progressive in trying to establish Colombian producers as, you know, the suppliers to the world. You know, and the opportunity for Latin America, which has a long history of producing very high quality cannabis, great climate for it, kind of low cost labor, and, you know, the quite a lot of experience producing it. Colombia is just one market where I think there's going to be a lot of product being produced that's being shipped outside to elsewhere in the world. And it's going to challenge a lot more countries who are looking at the dollars that Colombians are making off of this to say, why aren't we getting a piece of that? So I think it's going to create kind of this race of competition where people are saying, okay, so our neighbors have both legalized and the sky hasn't fallen. You don't have kind of zombie stoners wandering the streets, one. And two, they're making real money off of it. And, why are we not getting a share of that? So you're seeing a discussion, just across the region, from Costa Rica and Panama to places like Brazil, where there's a tension emerging between the economic progressives and the social conservatives on where cannabis is going to play. But I think the opportunity is going to be phenomenal in the region, and you're going to start seeing this domino effect. Now to Africa, which even if you'd asked me 4 years ago, I would never have thought we would have seen the space of change where that cannabis has evolved with on the continent. South Africa was one of the first countries in the world where the South African Supreme Court ruled that cannabis prohibition violated the human rights of South Africans. Think about that. An African, justice is basically saying, a system of justice is basically saying that prohibition violates human rights. That's just a mind-blowing thing. In the past 3 years, you've seen 7 countries in Southern Africa legalize. South Africa, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, which again, we did a cannabis conference in Zimbabwe last May, and just the thought that a country like Zimbabwe, which one would have thought is about as conservative as they come, is putting their back behind cannabis, in part because they're a major tobacco producer, and they're realizing that in very short order, tobacco is going to be a pariah industry. The demand for tobacco is ultimately going to fall dramatically once China starts to really curtail smoking. So what are they going to replace all of the tobacco production with? Mm-hmm. And for them, cannabis has been a natural opportunity.
Absolutely. All that farmland.
And they've got, there's a reason why Zimbabwe used to be called the breadbasket of Africa. I mean, some of the most lush, fertile land on the continent. So beyond the half dozen countries that have already legalized, we know of nearly 10 others that are having really active conversations about what to do with cannabis. And so the momentum is building on the continent. And part of the reason why Africa to me is particularly compelling is that it has the highest rates of use outside of North America. Apparently, Africans really like cannabis. And so the fact that you not only have phenomenal kind of cultivation environment, but a huge base of consumers already, all of the reasons for legalization that you see in Latin America also apply to Africa. But I think one of the differences is while consumption domestically in Latin America tends to be a bit low because you've had kind of a much more socially conservative ecosystem that I think has made the stigma of cannabis use really entrenched. In Africa, there's certainly stigma around cannabis use. I don't mean to discount that. But the reality is that it is really broadly consumed. And that, I think, is going to be part of the reason why these dominoes in Africa are falling so quickly, one, and why in Africa, the opportunity is not just going to be about pure export, but also about serving the local market as well.
Yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned about Zimbabwe, because a dream of ours, of me and Ramon, is that, like I said, we're first generation from Dominican Republic. And if you know, John, Dominican Republic has become now, after Cuba, the #1 producer of luxury cigars, tobacco, as you mentioned. So that's one of the reasons that we see that in the future over there, because we hope that they get on board, because as you said, all of this will be ripe for it to be a cannabis haven, as far as being able to switch all those tobacco fields to cannabis.
So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because particularly for a country like the Dominican Republic, one of the things that I don't think is considered enough, particularly amongst the Caribbean markets, is the opportunity that canna-tourism is going to represent. So Jamaica has legalized and has done actually, I think, a really good job in terms of setting up the regulatory structure.
It took them a while.
And I think it took a while. It absolutely took a while. And it's still moving pretty slowly. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they have a long way to go before that market is fully up and running. But in terms of at least the way they've defined the regulations, they've made it really easy both to become a participant in the market as well as to become a consumer in Jamaica, particularly as a non-resident. You can sign up with a medical card, relatively easily and go shopping immediately. It's a fairly straightforward process. So I think Jamaica has set the foundation for what could be a really robust canna tourism opportunity. But I think that opportunity applies to any Caribbean market that legalizes either medical or recreational. And so when you start thinking about, for example, in a market like the DR, where you have things like ecotourism that have really kind of helped define some of the opportunity or define the Dominican Republic's tourism as one that stands apart from other destinations in the world. When you start thinking about marrying the eco-tourist with a cannabis consumer and offering, say, deep, organic, hyper-sustainable cannabis in a deep, organic, hyper-sustainable tourism environment, I mean, I think the types of opportunities that start to emerge around that, we haven't scratched the surface of that yet. And these are some of the applications when we go beyond just having consumers be able to go to a dispensary to buy product and start thinking more deeply about what does a cannabis experience actually look like? Whether that's a culinary experience, a travel experience, a communal experience at arts and lights at music and arts festivals. I mean, I think we've begun to see that with some of the things like the parties that and the events HappyMunkey is running, but this is I think greenfield, and for people who haven't experienced like a phenomenal cannabis event, they can't get their heads around it. If you're living in an illicit market in Virginia, the thought of being able to walk into an event where you've got premium cannabis product, really sophisticated people having deep, intelligent conversations around cannabis and not alcohol. I mean, that's just mind-blowing things that a lot of the world just hasn't got its head around. And so, you guys are completely at the kind of forefront of this. But I think there's an emerging global opportunity around that is going to be long, durable, very difficult to get right.
That's why, John, recently we were interviewed by Forbes, and they asked me like, what's the end all be all for HappyMunkey? We said licensed dispensary, retail, and delivery in New York City. We said global consumption lounge franchise, and we said HappyMunkey Music Festival. Because they seem far-fetched to people that don't have vision like you, John, but these things seem all very feasible to us the way that we see this industry evolving.
I completely agree with that. And, if you, just as a one kind of illustration toward that, there's a hotelier that has just, or they're in the process of building a hotel in the Coachella Valley. And the idea is for it to be a fully cannabis infused hotel experience, Coachella. It is no coincidence that they're building it in the Coachella Valley, because you can see the synchronicity of having people show up for the Coachella festival and everything that Coachella is associated with, and going back to the hotel that is cannabis friendly, that has retail on site where they're growing, premium organic cannabis, whatever the case may be.
We need an invitation to the grand opening to that. What's going on? What's going on? HappyMunkey's supposed to be involved with that right there.
And I think you're going to start seeing more of these opportunities popping up, both domestically and around the world. Early days yet, but completely agree that you have a music festival of the events that you're hosting. As with so much related or associated with legalization, once you've had a cannabis consumer who's been living in the shadows in a deeply kind of unregulated or illicit market, experience something like Planet 13 in a legal market, or a HappyMunkey event in Vegas or New York, they go home and they're like, just totally mind blown. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. And this may be the one thing that the prohibitionists may be grossly underestimating, is because there's so many markets now, so many experiences that illustrate the potential of what legal cannabis could represent, whether that's on the product side, places like, the cannabis-friendly gyms, cannabis-friendly hotels. Not only is it making people much more comfortable with this idea of social cannabis spaces, communal cannabis events, but it also makes it that much more difficult to tell people that they've got to go get their cannabis from that sketchy guy down the road who's getting his cannabis from you don't know where and only has one type of training. Once you've gone to Planet 13, going back to that dark alley just doesn't, it doesn't feel right.
It's not as appealing.
It's not as appealing, and so the train is leaving the station. This train, the avalanche has already begun. I think it's more a question of when it's going to crash down into some of these systems and structures that have been entrenched for so long, but need to be massively disrupted in order to create a truly viable global cannabis economy.
Speaking, John, of disrupting systems, we have to touch base on it because I think it's going to have an impact in the cannabis industry, and I hope it does. So after the recent events of what happened to George Floyd, and as we know, the history of racism and classism here in the United States, how do you think after the uproar globally that just happened, that now I hope, and I want to ask what your analytics and your opinion says, that a lot of these cannabis corporate companies get held accountable, not just by putting a black square on their Instagram page, but actually diversifying their boards and their corporate structure. Do you see this happening more now in the near future in the cannabis industry? Because we see it happening in all the other industries at a massive scale. So I'm hoping that it happens in the cannabis industry also.
That's a great question and a really important one. And maybe I'll start just first with the George Floyd case and what it tells us about policing in the US. We just did a piece last week about the racial disparities in cannabis prohibition enforcement.
I read that. That was very amazing.
And one, in the US, somebody's arrested for a cannabis offense every 48 seconds. Since 1996, you've had nearly 17 million people arrested for cannabis offenses, which is maybe 5% of the US population. I mean, astonishing numbers. But you're also 3.5 times more likely to be arrested if you're Black than if you're white, even though Blacks and whites consume at equal rates. So there's been this huge racial inequity in the way prohibition has been enforced. And it's meant that, once you have that arrest record, we know the downstream implications that has on the ability for you to get ahead in life. You can't get college scholarships, you can't in public housing, you can't get jobs. Like it becomes a shackle that binds you for the rest of your life. So one of the things I think that you can't decouple this idea of police reform without also addressing this critical role that marijuana enforcement specifically, not just all drug laws, but marijuana specifically, since marijuana makes up half of all drug arrests, has played in this extraordinary kind of racial inequity in policing and all of the social consequences that that's had. I mean, you guys are in New York. You lived through stop and frisk.
Yes, we did. I'm a statistic.
There was a more than 100, if you were 18 to 35 and brown in New York, there was a more than 100% chance that you would get stopped by the police officer at least once a year.
Ridiculous.
So you can't, for all of the talks and proposals in discussion right now about changes to policing, I fully expect and I hope that a part of that is going to take away this use of marijuana, which has been used so often as a point of ingress, a point of interception. How many times have you heard, "I smell weed, and that's why I'm stopping you"?
Right.
Whether or not they do, how can you argue with that argument? Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of videos posted recently about cops planting small buds in people who they stopped so that they can create a case against them. You have the issue of legalization, I think, gains momentum in the context of people talking about police reform, just because the two are so deeply intertwined. So that's first, kind of my first point about what effect I think the George Floyd protests are having, and where cannabis, I think, could see increased momentum beyond what there already existed for reform. But now onto the industry side. I've been in the space 6 years. I've been watching it for nearly 10. And one of the things that has struck me is, when you look at how the industry's evolved, it began with a lot of minorities trying to get a seat at the table. The costs to get in were relatively low, and the opportunities were vast. But as the industry has become more competitive, more sophisticated, much more expensive to get in. I mean, I know a guy who started his first dispensary with $5,000 in a jar of cannabis. Now, good luck getting this dispensary up and running with less than $1 million. The economics have completely changed, and because of that, in an industry where you don't have access to the just general financial systems that operate in the rest of the economy, you can't get bank loans. It means that much of this industry is being built with private capital. And so who does that impact the most? Poor minority communities who don't have access to high net worth individuals who can participate in these programs. So I'm hoping that a few things will happen as we're having this really important conversation about diversity and equity. One, that it will add a lot more pressure to address the way marijuana or cannabis prohibition has been enforced. Two, that it will lead the deeply pocketed, highly liquid investors who've been advancing this industry to think very differently about what an investable opportunity looks like. Because we have seen a lot of white people invest in a lot of other white people, and a lot of great ideas being put forward by minority stakeholders, which aren't getting funded because they just don't have access to those rooms. Third, I hope that there'll be a lot more consideration as we look at senior executive positions in this industry, as we look at board member positions in this industry. People who will understand and recognize that not only is there a great deal of utility in having a diverse perspective, whether that's gender-based, racial-based, sexuality-based. There are far too many men who are making products for women in this space, and that's a huge problem. And there are far too many white men who are making products for Black consumers in this industry, and that's also a problem. And so I hope that there'll be a recognition that, this is not just token diversity or diversity tokenism. It's an opportunity to build better companies, to build better products, to build better consumer communities and more satisfied customers by drawing in perspectives from the people who represent those communities. This idea of the fastest dollar is the best dollar to be made in this industry is challenged by the reality that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if we're talking about building generational opportunities, not making opportunities that get us through the next week, the diversity is going to be an absolutely critical role in that. And maybe one thing I'd add to that. Cannabis in the US to date has been hyper-local. The state's laws make it mean that it's really difficult to traverse borders, which is why we have such few multi-state operators. But let's think about this. If cannabis ultimately goes legal federally, and then on top of that, you start seeing this global momentum building. The companies that which are being seeded now have the potential to become the vanguard of the new global cannabis economy. Are you going to be having companies whose entire staff, entire boards are all white trying to come to the Dominican Republic to tell the Dominicans about cannabis? Showing up in Africa trying to tell Africans how to sell cannabis? Mm-hmm. And it will, we have seen economic colonialism before. We know what it looks like when you pick your token to come and be your friend. The companies that have integrated diversity and have prioritized diversity in their foundation today, I think will be much stronger positioned, much better positioned to be at the vanguard of expanding globally, because you'll have the perspective of a diversity of perspectives that can help you navigate what are going to be very different environments than what you've seen in places like Seattle, which is not exactly the most diverse place on the planet. So just, I realize I've been on a soapbox on this, but I can't stress enough that one, there's got to be a strong conversation, a really robust conversation about this on the law enforcement side. But I think, the opportunity on the business side to create and activate phenomenal opportunities through diversity is something that this industry needs to confront now.
That's why, John, I'm glad the way you broke it down, because part of our goal, what me and Ramon are doing here, is that we've sort of become the nexus between corporate cannabis and culture cannabis. And our goal is for help both of them realize that they both need each other. And until they don't start working together, we'll never have a fully optimal industry, because it's like you said, for the corporate, it's not like we're saying to give away everything. Add a few more diverse people from different races, class, and sexuality to your board, to your company, and it's going to make you a better company. To the culture, you have to work with these people. They have the capital, they have the business acumen, and I just feel like bridging that gap is what's going to really help this industry reach its maximum capacity.
No question about that. And maybe just quick final thoughts around that. One, there's plenty of corporate data that shows that diversity actually improves the bottom line. So, even if you're doing it reluctantly, the data shows that companies that are more diverse, both genderly and racial based, perform better. So there's a strong business case to be made. But second, and this is really important for the cannabis industry to understand, this is a really young industry, and right now there's a lot of product development that is trying to be a one size fits all. People are just, if you build it, they will come. And so there's not been a great deal of thought about making products that are targeted to specific consumer groups. But that window is closing quickly. These markets are becoming much more competitive. The one size fits all are going to be replaced by the one size fits one, where the most successful companies, I think, are going to be the ones who've defined very clearly marked consumer groups, have invested in deeply understanding them, and have built products specifically aimed at them. So in that context, if you're transitioning away from trying to be all things to all men and women, and then are really taking a much more nuanced view on who your customers are and how to engage them, having that diverse perspective becomes even more critical, becomes even more important. Because in a one-size-fits-all market, it doesn't really matter who you're serving to, because you're just selling to everyone. But if you're now starting to think about, what does a 18 to 35 Hispanic male who is earning $150,000 a year and has been consuming for 15 years, what does that consumer look like relative to a 45-year-old Asian woman who has arthritis? I mean, those are two entirely different ecosystems. Yeah. And the idea that you can just throw something against the wall and hope it sticks, there's too much risk involved in that. So we can't, we think that diversity in terms of helping you better understand how to differentiate your products and how to build more effective products is just an additional reason why this should be an important conversation the industry should be having right now.
Agreed.
Now we got to ask you, John, because we know we've been rocking with you for a minute, but we want to know how you first found out about HappyMunkey, who told you about it, and what did you think as far as your first experience coming to events, meeting me and Ramon? What is your perspective on the company and the movement?
So, and actually talk a lot about you guys. I almost feel like I should be in one of your spokesmen for the
brand ambassador in the motherland. I'll take that. Let me tell you something. Shit, man, listen, we need a brother like you. Stop playing, man.
Yeah. So I was in New York for an event, and we'd obviously heard about HappyMunkey, but it just seemed like, there's no way such a place exists. I mean, come on, this is. I spent most of my time in the U.S. living in Virginia, which is the kind of environment where you talk about stealth consumption.
Yeah, I like that stealth consumption.
Yeah. So we heard about the HappyMunkey, and one of our colleagues who's based in New York was like, "You've got to come check these places out. You've got to see what these guys are doing." So I'm in the cannabis industry, and every opportunity like this is a research opportunity. So that's what I'm going to use as my claim for a show, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I remember being struck by a few things that have really stayed with me, and part of the reason why I've talked so much about HappyMunkey and kind of why I think it is so foundational to this evolution of social cannabis. One was just the professionalism of the environment. And I was really just struck by the way the shop was run. Like you show in, and this is a real spot. Like this is not a Mickey Mouse operation, and I think that matters. For people who are wondering what this looks like. I've been to a lot of danky basements, moldy, and I'm like, I'm never going to admit to ever being here, but I would never tell, you would never bring anyone that in respect to this kind of space. But HappyMunkey was different. Second, and this was actually one of the things that I thought exemplified a fundamental difference between cannabis and alcohol. So we spent a lot of time in this space, and I spent a lot of time just observing the dynamics of people who were coming in who didn't know each other and watching the way the interaction flows. One, the level of collegiality, just the level of cool in the room, the way people get on in that space was something that you would never see in a conventional bar. And there's just a brotherhood and sisterhood that comes around with cannabis that is singular. And when it really hit home was at the end of the night, when folks were now starting to wind down and head home. And I was actually commenting to the person sitting next to me, watching how many people who walked in who didn't know each other that were hugging each other as they were walking out. How many times have you gone to a bar and, at the end of the night, you're hugging everyone like you're lifelong friends? That just generally doesn't happen.
No. Mm-mm.
Was happening at HappyMunkey, and you could tell that this was the thing. Now, I'll chalk that up partly to you, Vladimir, and just the way you work a room. You are a master at it, and props to you for that. But I think there's something fundamentally communal about cannabis, that community building about cannabis, that I think is part of the opportunity that social cannabis spaces can tap into. And the fact that, because cannabis consumers cut across the entire cross-section of society, like it runs the entire gamut. The idea of being able to get that cross-section of people into a single space brought together by this one thing in a way that you generally wouldn't see in most other contexts. At a time when, we are generally not spending enough time talking to each other. There's not enough time spent building community with people who don't look like us, who don't talk like us, who don't think like us. If cannabis can be the one unifying thing that provides a platform, a context by which we can come together and perhaps catalyze conversations that clearly from what's happening in the country right now, we need to be having. I think there's just a phenomenal opportunity for social cannabis spaces to do that in a way that's untapped. And that's why I think HappyMunkey has been just such a catalytic thing in my own thinking about the potential for cannabis social spaces. And why I'm so excited to see what you guys are going to build next.
Thank you for those kind words, brother. That means a lot to us, man, especially coming from somebody like you that has really, traveled the globe checking cannabis trends. For us to stand out from the herd means a lot, because we know you've seen a lot and you've been around the block a few times.
$1 question, my friend.
I take that as part of the extraordinary privilege of my job, of my role in cannabis. I would never have thought that my joining the cannabis industry would have allowed me to travel around the world talking to people around the world about cannabis. But you talk about a blessing. I have never worked as hard as I have these past 6 years. But I've also never enjoyed my work as much as I have these past 6 years.
They say when you enjoy it that much, John, it's not work, it's a passion, so it doesn't feel like work. John, now it's time for the $1 million question. We ask everybody that's ever been on the podcast here on the Boulevard, and we're really interested in knowing what your one word is going to be. We ask everybody, if you had to describe Happy Monkey, the movement, everything you know about it, in one word, what would it be and why?
Great question.
I know you kind of described it a little bit right now, but now we hit you with the one word.
Visionary.
Why visionary?
For a couple of reasons. Being in the space for as long as I've been in it now, I can acutely appreciate the risk you've taken to do what you've done. And, there's a old saying, fortune favors the bold. The cannabis industry has gotten to this point led by people who have been willing to take risks that, a lot of people have thought about, but very few have been willing to take. And I think part of what leads people to take that risk, what I think has led you to take that risk, is your vision not of where this cannabis industry is going to be here today, not where it's going to be tomorrow, but looking down this marathon of where it's going to be years from now. And you've seen this in every industry that has transformed the global economy, that there's been somebody who's stepped out in front of the crowd when everybody else was willing or scared to do so. And it's generally those people who have, one, taken the first bullets, but as long as they've fought through, have ended up being the empire builders. And so, I can only applaud you for being willing to take that risk, but doubly so for having the vision to do something that, candidly, I don't think many would have thought possible, but to build a global community of people who believe in the idea and the vision of Happy Monkey. It's just an extraordinary thing to have done. So I think it is a visionary thing that you've done, and I don't use that word lightly.
Thank you very much, man. That's an honor, like I said, man, coming from a brother like you, because this industry definitely needs a lot smart black men like you, you know what I mean? So it's an honor to, hear it from you, you know what I mean? Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. We know you in Kenya, so we know you got a lot.
What time is it over there?
Word.
It's 5 o'clock in the morning.
5 o'clock in the morning. Damn, man. Damn, we really appreciate you now.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
No.
Thank
For you guys, the honor is mine.
Oh man, thank
this
you.
This is the kind of thing I'm willing to drink a cup of coffee for.
Well, John, now before we leave, we need you to tell all the people what should they expect from you for the rest of 2020 and New Frontier Data, where they can find out more information if they want to get data and information on the industry, since you guys are the industry leader, and where to find you.
I really appreciate that, and once again, thank you for this opportunity, guys. So you can find everything that we do at newfrontierdata.com. That's newfrontierdata.com. We put out just a phenomenal amount of market research, industry intelligence, and a great deal of it is free. And we cover this entire industry both domestically and globally. So everything from how consumer behavior is evolving to how product trends are shaping new market opportunities to what's happening on the global scale. So you can reach me at jkaglia@newfrontierdata.com. But yeah, come check us out, and I hope you'll take advantage of the insights that we're delivering to this space, because I've covered a lot of different sectors in my career, but I've never seen anything like the cannabis industry. And when we talk about truly generational wealth creation opportunities, for those particularly smart minority folks who've been sitting on the sidelines wondering whether this is a space you want to get involved in, governments have declared it essential. We're talking about an election that's going to change the landscape for cannabis in the US. We're talking about countries flipping the switch to legalize, as far as Lebanon and Ghana just in the past month. This is an opportunity that is truly unlike anything we've seen before. and it is hungry for young, smart, passionate people to help lay the foundation for not just a hugely lucrative industry, but one that is sustainable and one that redresses much of the inequities that have been borne by prohibition over the past century.
John, we want to thank you for everything you do for this industry,
Absolutely.
for the culture, and more importantly, to give people like me and Ramon inspiration to know that there's people like yourself that have reached the levels and the magnitude that you have. So it helps us know that, you know, that these things are possible by watching you. Thank you for joining the Boulevard.
Absolutely, man. It shows us we got brothers that got our back, man, when we reach levels like yours, man. Come on, man.
No. We are, I say we stand on the shoulders of giants, and we just want to be like you guys when we grow up.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You got the data from the data expert, master John Kaglia. For now, we're checking out. Look out for him. He's going to be doing amazing things, and so will New Frontier Data. For now, Vlad and Ramon checking out. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, you're too blessed to be stressed. Things will get greater later. For now, till the next episode, peace, love, and happiness, everybody. Peace.
Thank you much, guys.
What's good, everybody? This is your nigga Ralph, trying to keep you fresh with the info from Happy Monkey every single podcast. You already know what it is. If you haven't followed us yet, follow us on Instagram at HappyMunkey_ or Happy Monkey Goodies. Now remember, that's monkey with a U. Also, if you haven't checked us out, we're on YouTube, so check out our channel, Happy Monkey TV. Keep us current, live, and everything with the culture.